Welcome to a journey into one of the most fascinating chapters in the world of philately, a world where every stamp tells a story, where history lives within delicate paper, and where collectors pursue not just value, but legacy. Today, we'll uncover the captivating tale of a postage stamp so majestic, so historically important, and so prized by collectors, that it stands tall among the most iconic in British postal history. We're talking about the £1 brown lilac Queen Victoria stamp, issued in the late 19th century during the height of the British Empire. This isn't just a piece of paper. It's a window into a global empire. It's a reflection of economic power, technological progress, and royal prestige. This is more than just a stamp, this is a fragment of history, preserved in color and ink, worth thousands of dollars today, and coveted by collectors worldwide. Whether you are a seasoned philatelist, a passionate historian, or simply curious about what makes a tiny square of paper worth the price of a used car or more, you're about to discover why this stamp remains so incredibly valuable, and why it continues to capture hearts, imaginations, and high bids at international auctions. Let's travel back to the year 1878, a time when the sun never set on the British Empire. Queen Victoria sat on the throne, trade was booming, and steamships and railways connected the empire's farthest reaches. To issue a stamp of that value was extraordinary. It was never meant for everyday mailing or casual correspondence. It was strictly for commercial use, such as international trade shipments, legal parcels, and bulk documentation. Very few people would ever have seen this stamp in daily life, and even fewer would have ever used it. The design of this stamp is just as remarkable as its value. The £1 brown lilac features an exquisite profile of Queen Victoria, delicately engraved and framed in an ornate border. Printed by the legendary De La Rue Printing Company, the detail is extraordinary, from the fine lines in Victoria's hair to the elegant floral motifs and security patterns that prevent forgery. Every inch of the stamp was meticulously crafted. Its symmetrical layout, the use of elaborate engraving, and the integration of the denomination symbol £1 on both sides of the portrait all signal a sense of prestige and authority. The stamp's color, a muted brown lilac, was chosen not just for aesthetics, but also for practical reasons. It was less prone to fading and difficult to replicate, which was crucial for a stamp of such high value. It stood out on envelopes and parcels, making it instantly recognizable to postal workers and customs officials. Because the stamp was expensive and used only in specific, high-value contexts, it was printed in very limited quantities. It wasn't mass-produced like penny stamps, and most of the stamps that were printed were eventually used, affixed to packages that traveled across seas and continents. But when you move into mint-condition territory, the numbers increase rapidly. A lightly hinged example, one that's unused but previously mounted, can sell for $5,000 to $8,000. And if you are lucky enough to find a mint never hinged version, meaning the stamp retains its original gum and has never been mounted, values can soar to $10,000, $15,000, or even more. In 2023, an exceptional example sold for close to $20,000, simply due to its flawless preservation and sharp printing quality. But the stamp's value is not measured only in currency. Its value also lies in its history. This was a stamp used at the height of imperial power, a time when Britain controlled vast territories, when mail could cross oceans powered by coal and wind, and when the post was a lifeline between colonies and the crown. This stamp traveled that world. It witnessed commerce, diplomacy, and law in action. It is a surviving witness to a global empire's operations. Of course, as with any high-value collectible, caution is required. Because of its fame and desirability, the £1 Queen Victoria stamp has been the subject of many forgeries and reproductions. If you're considering buying one, insist on certification from a reputable philatelic body, such as the Royal Philatelic Society London or the British Philatelic Association. Look for stamps that come with detailed provenance and expert evaluation. You'll also want to pay close attention to centering, perforations, watermarks, and gum condition. A stamp that is slightly off-center, has a small tear, or has had its gum disturbed can lose a significant portion of its value. Conversely, a perfectly centered, untouched stamp with clean perforations and no blemishes can command a premium many times over. If you do acquire one of these extraordinary stamps, proper storage and preservation are crucial. Store it in a climate-controlled environment, away from direct sunlight, moisture, and heat. Use acid-free paper mounts or specialized albums designed for philatelic materials. Always handle the stamp with tongs or gloves, never with bare fingers, as even skin oils can damage delicate gum or ink over time. And perhaps most importantly, understand that when you hold a £1 Queen Victoria stamp, you are holding a piece of art, a symbol of power, and a tangible link to a bygone era. It's a silent storyteller, one that has traveled through time and space to arrive in your hands, nearly 150 years after it was first issued. In today's world of instant communication and digital mail, this physical relic reminds us of a time when a message's journey was a feat of coordination, logistics, and international effort. The £1 Queen Victoria stamp captures that spirit, and for that reason, it will always remain a treasure, not only for what it's worth, but for what it represents. Next up, the £1 Queen Elizabeth II Windsor Castle stamp. This stamp isn't just a piece of paper. It's a piece of history. A masterpiece of design. And in some cases, a surprisingly valuable asset in the collectibles market today. So stay with me as we journey through its origins, artistic design, royal connections, production techniques, collector interest, and most importantly, its current value in today's stamp market, in 2024, measured in US dollars. Let's begin with the backdrop to this stamp's creation. The £1 Windsor Castle stamp was issued in 1955 as part of the iconic Castles high-value definitive series under the reign of Queen Elizabeth II, just 3 years after she ascended the throne. This series consisted of 4 denominations, 2 shillings and 6 pence, 5 shillings, 10 shillings, and £1. Each denomination featured a different historic British castle, symbolizing strength, continuity, and the monarchy's connection to British heritage. The £1 denomination depicted Windsor Castle, perhaps the most. His goal was to present these castles not as isolated buildings, but as living, breathing symbols of national identity. The £1 Windsor Castle stamp achieves this with stunning clarity. Lamb's work was engraved and printed by Waterlow & Sons Ltd, a British firm renowned for its high-quality security printing. Using the recess or intaglio printing method, they engraved the design into metal plates and pressed it onto paper, a labor-intensive process that resulted in beautiful, richly detailed images with depth and texture that collectors love. Now, let's consider why this particular stamp is so prized. In 1955, a £1 denomination was an incredibly high face value. At the time, £1 was equivalent to roughly $2.80, a lot of money for a single stamp, and something far beyond the cost of sending a regular letter. These high-value stamps were typically used for parcels, international mail, and business correspondence. As a result, the number of stamps issued was relatively small compared to lower denominations, and many of them were used and discarded. This makes mint-condition examples harder to find today, especially those that are perfectly centered, with intact gum and no hinge marks. So how much is this stamp worth in today's market? Let's talk numbers. In 2024, the used version of the £1 Windsor Castle stamp typically sells for anywhere between $5 and $25, depending on the quality of the postmark and overall condition. A well-centered, lightly cancelled example will always fetch more than a heavily used or poorly preserved one. But the real interest is in mint-condition stamps, especially unhinged mint examples with full original gum. These can sell for $40 to $100, and in some cases even higher, especially at auction or among specialized collectors. Some dealers list pristine, never-hinged specimens for upwards of $120 to $150, particularly if the centering is exceptional and the stamp is free of blemishes. Even more valuable are the errors and varieties. There are known examples of this stamp with watermark variations or printing flaws, such as inverted or sideways watermarks, missing color areas, or plate flaws. These rarities are much sought after by advanced collectors and can reach prices as high as $200 to $300, depending on the rarity and condition. Now, if you're holding one of these stamps and wondering what to look for, here are some quick collector tips. Check the gum on the back. Is it original? Has it been hinged before? Mint unhinged stamps are worth more. Inspect the centering. A well-centered stamp is far more valuable than one where the image is off-center. Look for damage. Avoid stamps with thins, tears, creases, or heavy postmarks if you want top dollar. Use a watermark detector. Some rare watermark varieties are worth several times more than the standard version. And finally, keep it protected. Use archival sleeves, acid-free paper, and keep it away from direct light and moisture. This stamp is more than a collectible, it's a time capsule. It captures the energy and optimism of the early years of Queen Elizabeth II's reign. A young queen, a powerful kingdom, and the rich visual storytelling of British castles. Today, with Queen Elizabeth II's passing, her early memorabilia, including stamps, are seeing a resurgence in interest. Collectors and historians alike are revisiting the symbols of her remarkable reign, and stamps like this one are at the center of that renewed attention. The £1 Windsor Castle stamp isn't just valuable for its monetary worth, it's a symbol of British history, a work of art in miniature, and a tribute to a monarch who served for over 70 years. For collectors, it offers the perfect blend of history, craftsmanship, and potential value appreciation. Next up, the £2 airmail stamp from the territory of New Guinea. Now, this isn't just any stamp. This piece of purple postal art tells the story of a time when airmail was cutting edge, and when vast colonial territories like New Guinea were still deeply remote and mysterious to much of the world. Issued in 1935, this stamp is part of a celebrated airmail series designed to commemorate the silver jubilee of King George V, who had then reigned for 25 years. Let's talk about the design first, because it's nothing short of breathtaking. In the center of the stamp, we see a bold depiction of an early aircraft flying over the lush and mountainous terrain of New Guinea. The winding river below hints at the rugged landscape of this tropical island, and the use of deep violet ink gives the scene a regal, almost dreamlike appearance. On the left side, we have a grand sailing ship, symbolizing the age of discovery and the maritime journeys that brought Europeans to the South Pacific. On the right, a native New Guinean stands tall, a powerful nod to the indigenous people of the land. Together, these elements, the plane, the ship, and the native figure, create a symbolic narrative of exploration, contact, and change. But what makes this stamp so important to collectors? Well, first, it was issued in very limited numbers. The £2 value was extremely high at the time, roughly equivalent to over $150 US in today's money, and it was never intended for everyday postal use. It was reserved for heavy airmail packages and official mail that required high-value postage. That means fewer people bought it, and even fewer preserved it. Many of the used copies were stuck to parcels and envelopes that have long since been destroyed, making well-preserved examples very rare today. The stamp was produced by Bradbury Wilkinson and Company, a highly respected security printer based in England. Known for their detailed engravings and secure printing processes, they created stamps and banknotes for governments all over the world. Their work on the New Guinea Airmail series, and especially the £2 stamp, is considered some of their finest. Now let's talk value in 2024, because this is where things get exciting. If you happen to own one of these stamps, even in used condition, you're in possession of something truly valuable. A used £2 New Guinea airmail stamp, with a clear cancellation mark and minimal damage, can sell for $200 to $500 US depending on overall condition. However, the real prize is in the mint condition versions. Those that were never used, have full gum on the back, and no hinge marks. A mint condition stamp can fetch between $800 to $1,500 US, sometimes even more. In fact, pristine examples, especially those with superb centering, fresh color, and no flaws, have sold for over $2,000 US at major stamp auctions. And it doesn't end there. There are also specimen overprints, imperfect proofs, and plate examples of this issue. These variations are even rarer and highly desirable among advanced collectors. Some of these rarities have reached prices of $3,000 to $5,000 US, depending on market interest and provenance. But how do you know if the stamp you're looking at is genuine and valuable? Here are a few things to look for. Watermark: the original stamp was printed on paper with a palm tree watermark. You'll need a watermark detector or a strong backlight to spot this. It's a crucial sign of authenticity. Centering and margins: well-centered stamps are more valuable. Poorly centered examples with narrow margins or off-print images are considered lower grade. Gum condition: for mint stamps, the condition of the gum on the back makes a huge difference. A never-hinged stamp with original gum can double or triple its value. Color vibrancy: the original violet ink should be deep and rich. Faded or discolored examples are less valuable. Postmark clarity: for used stamps, a clean, readable postmark that doesn't obscure the main image is preferred. If you're thinking of buying or selling this stamp, always consult with a certified stamp expert or a trusted auction house. Authenticity certificates and historical context add real value to rare issues like this. So why is this stamp so important today? Because it stands at the crossroads of colonial history, aviation, and artistic craftsmanship. It captures a world that was on the cusp of rapid change, when air travel was just beginning to connect distant parts of the British Empire, and stamps were not only tools of communication but also instruments of national pride and propaganda. The £2 New Guinea airmail stamp is more than a collectible, it's a conversation piece, a slice of global history, and a beautiful tribute to an era gone by. Whether you're a beginner starting your collection, or an advanced philatelist curating rare pieces, this stamp remains one of the most iconic issues from the colonial Pacific. Next up, the £5 manufactured tobacco tax stamp. Now, at first glance, you might be wondering how something as obscure as a tobacco tax stamp could be worth money today. But that's exactly what makes this story so fascinating. This isn't just a printed piece of paper, it's a window into America's economic and industrial history. It's a survivor from an era of heavy regulation, booming industry, and government control over one of the most profitable products of the time, tobacco. And today, depending on the condition and rarity, some of these tax stamps can be worth hundreds of dollars or more to the right collector. Let's start at the beginning. The £5 manufactured tobacco tax stamp was introduced in the 19th century as part of the U.S. government's internal revenue system. This was during a time when the government needed reliable sources of income, especially after the Civil War and into the Industrial Age. Tobacco, being a widely consumed and highly profitable product, became a prime target for taxation. In order to enforce these taxes and prevent illegal trade, the Bureau of Internal Revenue, what we now know as the Internal Revenue Service, or IRS, began printing a series of revenue stamps. These stamps would be physically attached to tobacco products to show that taxes had been paid. For manufacturers, the £5 stamp was used on large bulk containers, barrels, or tins of manufactured tobacco, most often used by wholesalers or industrial operations. What makes the £5 stamp particularly special is its sheer size and design. These were not small stickers like modern postage stamps. They were large, often ornate pieces of engraved artwork. They might measure several inches in length and width, with vibrant inks, detailed scroll work, intricate government seals, and serial numbers. Each one was a mix of function and beauty. And these stamps weren't mass-produced to the same extent as lower-denomination versions. Because fewer manufacturers needed such large quantities, they were printed in smaller numbers. That lower production volume, combined with their fragility and the nature of their use, makes them far rarer today. Imagine this, a wooden crate filled with £5 of tobacco, sealed with paper tax stamps. When the crate was opened, the stamp was usually torn or partially destroyed. If the box was thrown away, the stamp went with it. And because these stamps were made of thin, often non-durable paper, exposure to moisture, sunlight, and handling over time caused them to deteriorate. That's why finding a £5 tobacco tax stamp today in excellent condition is incredibly rare. Most of the surviving examples are either torn, incomplete, or faded. But every once in a while, collectors come across a well-preserved specimen that tells a much bigger story. Now, why are these stamps so valuable today? First and foremost, rarity drives demand. In the world of collectibles, scarcity is everything. The £5 denomination wasn't common to begin with, and very few survived the decades in good shape. Combine that with the growing interest in revenue stamps, a subset of philately, or stamp collecting, and you have a market where these items are highly sought after. Unlike postage stamps, revenue stamps were used to pay internal taxes and rarely received the same attention from casual collectors. But in recent years, interest in revenue stamps, especially those tied to major American industries like alcohol and tobacco, has surged. Many collectors are also drawn to the historical significance of these stamps. They reflect a time when tobacco was a cornerstone of the American economy. The early 20th century saw the rise of massive tobacco corporations, companies like American Tobacco Company, Liggett and Myers, and Lorillard, just to name a few. These stamps were part of the legal framework that allowed those businesses to thrive while the government ensured it collected its share of the profits. The stamps often include factory numbers, dates, or cancellation marks that can pinpoint exactly where and when they were used. That kind of detail makes them more than just a collectible, they become a document of American commerce and regulation. Let's move on to current market value. In today's collector market, a £5 manufactured tobacco tax stamp in poor or heavily damaged condition, say, one that's torn or incomplete, might still fetch between $200 and $500 just because of its historical nature. These are typically found on eBay, at flea markets, or in estate sales. They might not look like much, but for someone starting a collection, they're a great entry point. If you happen to find one in better condition, one that's mostly intact, with legible text, vibrant coloring, and visible serials, then the price goes up dramatically. These mid-range examples can easily sell for between $1,000 and $3,000, depending on their year, design variation, and scarcity. And then there are the truly rare examples, those in near-mint condition, or with unusual overprints, error prints, or factory marks. Some collectors are willing to pay $5,000 or more for these high-end specimens. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive into the world of revenue stamps. If you found this video informative, please like, subscribe, and share it with fellow collectors. And if you have your own stories or stamps to show off, drop a comment below. We love hearing from you. Until next time, keep searching, keep learning, and keep collecting.